Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always excited to get into these.
Well, this time we're looking at something
Family.
more than timely, I'd say. It's AI and the impact it's going to have on global politics.
Particularly in the next, say, 5 to 10 years.
Exactly. And our source material for this is
Pretty fascinating one, I think.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
A conversation between a prominent physicist and,
Dominic Cummings.
you know him, right?
Whoa, for sure. The strategist behind the Brexit campaign.
Yeah. And, of course, former advisor to Boris Johnson.
His perspective on AI is, well, let's just say it's provocative.
Provocative is a good word for it. We're going to be,
And deep.
you got it,
Thanks,
deep
bud.
diving into their predictions on how AI could shake up.
Everything, really.
Yeah.
Political systems, power dynamics.
Even warfare.
One thing that struck me right away was how Cummings frames this whole technological shift.
Historically, right.
Exactly. He compares it to the disruption caused by, like, the railways, the telegraph, even mass media.
I see what he's getting at.
To him, it's all about this fragmentation of what he calls consensus reality.
Driven by technology, but
Yeah.
even more so by AI now.
Right. And he uses this to explain, the growing divide between,
Like, say, Elon Musk,
and these more traditional institutions.
like the media, academia,
Exactly. It's almost like we're moving towards this,
information chaos.
exactly. It's becoming harder and harder to establish a shared truth, a shared reality.
Cummings actually suggests we're, in a way, reverting to a pre-mass media state.
With all the uncertainties and complexities that come with that.
Oh, that's a sobering thought.
It is. And it leads us to his, his pretty strong critique of what he calls pathological institutions.
This is where he really gets going.
Oh, yeah. He argues that Western bureaucracies, especially in the UK, they're just
Not equipped,
not even close. They can't adapt to this rapid pace of technological change.
especially when it comes to AI.
He brings up some specific examples, too, like the UK government dismantling successful data science initiatives,
Or the,
the mishandling of gain-of-function research, for example.
it's like they're actively hindering progress.
That's exactly his point. He says these institutions are more focused on preserving their own power.
Than actually embracing progress, especially with AI.
And that's a dangerous game to play, especially in the long run.
It is. And it brings us to the global stage, the geopolitical implications of AI.
Cummings talks about this emerging AI arms race between the US and China.
Right, and the potential for miscalculations, even escalations.
He's particularly skeptical of any strategy aimed at,
US-led AI dominance.
Exactly. He thinks it could create more instability, not less.
He actually compares it to historical flashpoints, like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. Imagine that time frame compressed by AI-driven processes.
More than a little unsettling.
It really makes you question if our current models of deterrence diplomacy,
Are they even equipped to handle this?
the speed, the complexity of AI-driven warfare. I'm not sure.
There is a sliver of hope, though, right?
You mean the agreement between Biden and Xi?
Yeah, not to automate nuclear weapons systems. At least that's something.
But even with that, the growing autonomy in drone warfare,
Driven by the need for speed, of course.
it does raise some serious concerns.
It's a tough dilemma. You need speed in critical situations.
But the risk of losing human oversight is just, well, it's huge.
Cummings doesn't shy away from the potential societal disruptions either.
He paints a pretty stark picture of what's coming.
Mass unemployment, especially in the white-collar service sector.
AI automation is accelerating, there's no doubt about that,
And he even suggests that skilled professions could be automated.
leading to societal unrest and probably increased political pressure.
It's a valid concern. What happens when technology disrupts the livelihoods of millions?
How do we address that? How do we prevent AI from just widening the gap between the haves and have-nots?
Cummings talks about the emergence of what he calls agentic companies.
These AI-powered entities operating with...
Unprecedented autonomy.
It's almost like the CEO isn't a person anymore, but a sophisticated AI calling the shots.
Disrupting traditional economic models even further.
It sounds like science fiction, but is it really that far-fetched?
The point is, we need to prepare for this future.
We can't ignore it, can't pretend it's not coming.
Cummings is right about that, at least.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
A lot to unpack.
Absolutely. AI is forcing us to confront some fundamental questions about the future.
Of work, of power, even what it means to be human in this new world.
A world increasingly shaped by intelligent machines.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And it doesn't stop there. Cummings really gets into how AI could completely change how political campaigns work.
It's fascinating, but also kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, the idea of AI-powered tools for like hyper-personalized messaging
It's like taking micro-targeting to a whole new level.
could completely reshape how elections are won and lost.
Yeah.
And for Cummings, this isn't just theory, right?
No, not at all. He talks about his own experience using AI for polling during the Brexit campaign.
So he's seen it firsthand.
Exactly. And he thinks these techniques are just going to become more sophisticated, more widespread,
His description of synthetic polling really caught my attention.
creating focus groups within a language model. Wild, isn't it?
It's mind-blowing. Could we get to a point where AI is basically simulating public opinion?
So accurately, so quickly, that traditional polling becomes obsolete.
Yeah. Imagine campaigns A/B testing their messaging in real time.
Constantly refining their appeals based on AI analysis of voter sentiment.
Combine that with AI-generated content that's practically indistinguishable from the real thing.
Videos, audio, articles, all of it.
The potential for manipulation.
It's a huge concern.
It is. A world where campaigns are dominated by AI-generated content, micro-targeted to exploit our fears.
Our hopes, our biases.
How do we even ensure authenticity in political discourse when we can't tell if a message is from a human or an AI?
It's a massive challenge. And Cummings' point is, our traditional institutions are not equipped to deal with this.
He keeps coming back to that, doesn't he?
He's really hammering home this idea of pathological institutions,
Stuck in their ways, resistant to change.
especially when it comes to AI. He points to examples like the UK government dismantling successful AI initiatives,
Almost like they see AI as a threat to their own power.
trying to suppress its development instead of embracing it.
So what's the solution? What does adaptation look like in this context?
Cummings suggests we need to rethink everything: how institutions operate, how decisions are made, even how power is distributed.
It's almost like he's calling for a complete overhaul of the system.
He talks about creating new entities specifically designed to manage the complexities of AI.
Operating outside of the traditional bureaucracy.
Agile, adaptable, able to move quickly and experiment.
He uses the example of a dedicated pandemic response unit.
Something like that, but for AI. Not just reacting to crises, but anticipating challenges, developing frameworks to address them.
So a more proactive and strategic approach to AI.
Exactly. But he also acknowledges this tension between the need for government oversight and the influence of Silicon Valley.
Right, the big tech companies driving a lot of this innovation.
Governments rely on their expertise, their resources.
But they're also wary of their power, their influence.
It's a delicate balancing act.
On one hand, you need to foster innovation, avoid stifling development.
On the other hand, you have to protect the public interest, make sure AI is developed ethically, safely.
And Cummings highlights this push from some in Silicon Valley for minimal regulation.
Which brings us to the big question: who should control the future of AI?
Governments, tech elites, a combination of both.
This debate is just heating up, and as Cummings points out, it's not just a technical issue, it's fundamentally political.
The choices we make about AI governance will have huge consequences.
For democracy, for social justice, for the very fabric of society.
It's a lot to grapple with.
Absolutely. But it's also incredibly exciting.
We're on the cusp of a revolution, one that could reshape our world in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Cummings' insights give us a glimpse into the challenges, the opportunities ahead.
Forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about our systems, but also to imagine new possibilities. One thing that really struck me about Cummings is that even with all this talk about AI, he never loses sight of the human element.
Yeah, he's very clear about that. AI is powerful, transformative even, but it's not some autonomous force dictating our destiny.
It's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And like any tool, it depends on us, on how we choose to use it.
He doesn't let us off the hook, though. He's pretty scathing in his critique of existing institutions.
Those pathological institutions, as he calls them.
Right. He argues that they're so focused on preserving their own power, their own way of doing things.
That they're missing the bigger picture. They're failing to grasp the transformative potential of AI.
He uses this really interesting analogy, comparing these institutions to an immune system.
That sees innovators like Elon Musk as a virus.
To be neutralized. It's like they're actively trying to suppress innovation rather than embrace it.
And that leads to the question, can these institutions adapt? Can they change fast enough to keep up with the pace of AI development?
Cummings argues that they need to, and he offers some pretty radical solutions.
He talks about a fundamental rethinking of how we govern AI.
Moving away from rigid bureaucratic structures towards something much more agile, much more adaptable.
Creating new entities specifically designed to manage the complexities of AI.
Operating outside of the traditional bureaucracy, free to move quickly, to experiment.
It's almost like he's envisioning a Silicon Valley within government.
That's a great way to put it, a place where innovation isn't stifled but encouraged.
He uses the example of a dedicated pandemic preparedness unit.
A model for this kind of agile, AI-driven entity, not just reacting to crises after they happen.
But anticipating them, developing strategies to prevent them.
Being proactive, not reactive.
It's a compelling vision, a more strategic, more forward-thinking approach to AI.
But it also requires a different kind of leadership, doesn't it?
Leaders who understand technology, but who can also think strategically, who can make tough decisions in the face of uncertainty.
It's a lot to ask, but as Cummings points out, the stakes are incredibly high.
They are. The future of AI is ultimately in our hands. The choices we make today will shape our world for generations to come.
And that's what makes this conversation so important. It's not just about technology, it's about who we are, what kind of future we want to build.
It's about recognizing the transformative power of AI, but also understanding that it's a tool, not a master.
It's about finding ways to govern this technology wisely, ethically, and for the benefit of all humanity.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I hope it's given you all some food for thought.
AI is changing the world, and it's up to us to shape that change to ensure that it leads to a future where everyone can thrive.
So keep exploring these issues, keep asking questions, keep the conversation going. The future is ours to create.